Okay. You gotta be over that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Gifford. I did. Let's speak into it better.
Closer.
Is that better? Yeah. Sorry, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Gifford. I'm a counselor at High School East. Mr. Carpentieri and Mr. Ripchick are here from the Counseling Center as well. And we'd like to thank our guest speaker, Linda Parker, who is the Director of Financial Aid at Union College. We are very fortunate to have her here to share with us her expertise on the financial aid process and to answer your questions at the conclusion of the program. Hopefully everyone has a copy of the PowerPoint and survey. Before Mrs. Parker begins, we ask that you complete the top portion of your survey, and we ask that you wait until the end of the program to complete the bottom portion of your survey. We have a collection box on the table outside of the auditorium for completed surveys. Your feedback is very important to us, and we adjust all of our programs annually based on your responses. Also, if you have a green sticker on the back of your PowerPoint, please see us after the program because you have won a college t-shirt. Thank you. Now I'll turn it over to Linda Parker.
Okay, can everyone hear me in the back? Yes? Okay, great. Thanks for coming tonight. As Megan said, I'm Linda Parker. I'm the Director of Financial Aid at Union College. What I'd like to do this evening is to give you a general overview of how financial aid works, how to apply, what are the things you need to look for, how do the formulas work, how are they going to measure your expected family contribution, which everybody wants to know. And I'll be happy to stay at the conclusion of the program to answer any questions that you may have. So let's get started. Okay, so principles of needs analysis and financial aid. To the extent that families are able, the primary responsibility for paying for higher education rests with the family. So financial aid is basically a resource to help families to subsidize or to pay what they cannot afford to pay, or in some cases, to help find grants and loans and different options for families to make it affordable for their kids to participate in higher education, which is extremely important. Students are also going to be expected to contribute as part of the expected family contribution, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the formulas. And as I said, it's the ability to pay that we are measuring. It's not the willingness to pay. So just because someone doesn't want to pay does not mean that they do not have to. So the formulas are going to measure a family's ability to pay for higher education. And the role of the aid office is basically to just distribute financial aid resources to families in an equitable fashion. So certainly you can reach out to the staff in your financial aid office. They are there to help you. They're there to help you navigate the aid process, to answer questions about applying for aid, the types of aid that you might be receiving, and how that works at each individual college. Okay, so let's start with applying for financial aid. Whether your son or daughter is applying to a private university, public university, community college, they are likely going to have to complete the free application for federal student aid. That is also known as the FAFSA. So in order for a college to participate in any of the federal funding, students must complete the FAFSA in order to qualify for federal loans or federal grants. If your son or daughter is considering applying to a high-cost private institution, they are likely going to be asked to complete the CSS profile, which is an application through the College Board. If your sons or daughters have taken SAT exams, which I'm sure they have, they've registered as a student through the College Board, they're going to do the same thing to complete the CSS profile. It's an online application only. If the biological parents of the student are separated or divorced, some colleges or universities may ask the non-custodial parent to also complete a non-custodial profile. In other words, the formulas are going to expect something from a custodial parent and perhaps something from a non-custodial parent. That's something that will differ from school to school, so you'll want to be paying attention to what school is going to require what applications. And along those same lines, if the family has a business or is self-employed, that college or university may ask the family to complete a business farm supplement, which is also an application through the College Board. Some institutions have their own application. It's an online application through their own college. So it might be something in addition to the FAFSA and CSS profile, or it might be something just in addition to the FAFSA. So you'll want to be sure that you're checking the financial aid websites of the colleges that your sons and daughters are applying to make sure that you are completing their required financial aid applications. They may not be reaching out to you to say, I haven't gotten this, or you need to submit this. So you want to make sure that you're on top of what forms are required and the deadlines by which they need to be completed. A couple of things that are changing, and if you've never been through this process before, it's not changing for you. But two things that are changing this year that are really significant changes that are going to impact your applying for financial aid is, number one, the free application for federal student aid becomes available on October 1 of 2016. So in 3-4 months, you're going to be able to complete the free application for federal student aid. And the second thing that's changing is, instead of reporting your previous year's income on that application, the application is going to ask you for we call prior year income, so 2-year-old information. So you're going to fill out a FAFSA on October 1, 2016, and it's going to be asking you to provide 2015 income information. You're applying for aid for 2017-18. You're providing prior year income, which is 2015. The application will be very clear about that. It will tell you exactly what to be providing. What is going to make this process really much easier for all of you is that you've already completed your 2015 tax return. So that's done. It's a done deal. And the FAFSA gives you the option of actually connecting to the IRS database and having that information just provided right on your application. So you don't even have to fill out your income information. Your son or daughter doesn't have to fill out their income information. You can both link to the IRS, and we call it using the IRS data retrieval tool. There are a few cases where families cannot use the IRS data retrieval, but 99% of the time they can. So I urge you, because it will, first of all, you will be providing the most accurate information on your application. If you use the IRS data retrieval tool, you will not have to request transcripts from the IRS down the road to submit to the school that your son or daughter ends up enrolling in. So I'm in my office, I've got a FAFSA that comes in electronically for my student, and I can see that they transferred their data from the IRS and they didn't change anything. I don't need to go after that family for any tax verification information. So it's going to make it a lot simpler for you because you can use the IRS data retrieval tool because your information is housed and it's been done for several months. So I urge all of you to do that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the formula. So the FAFSA essentially is going to look at the size of your household, number of family members enrolled in college, the income, both taxable and non-taxable, of the parents, assets of the parents excluding your home. It does not take into account home equity or home value minus home debt. It will also take into account students' income and student assets. So basically, those are the drivers. Those are the variables in the formula. The thing to note is that for both the FAFSA and the CSS profile, they are both very income-driven formulas. And in general, I tell families, you should expect to contribute between 15 and 20% of your income. And when I say your income, I'm talking about your adjusted gross income, which is your taxable income. And non-taxable income include things like if you have deductions from your payroll put into a 401k or a 403b, that's considered non-taxable income. If you have a non-taxable pension or annuity, that needs to be included as non-taxable income. If you receive child support, that's non-taxable income. Those are examples of non-taxable. I mentioned the 401k and the 403b because people don't think of that as non-taxable income because you put it into your retirement, you can't take it out. So why does the formula consider it non-taxable income? Well, they do because it's a voluntary thing that you're doing. So you could choose to not put money in your retirement and have that money towards education. So that's the reasoning behind it. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just simply telling you that that is non-taxable income that must be reported. On the other hand, the value of your retirement plan, so the value of your 401k and your 403b, should not be included as an asset on either the FAFSA or the CSS profile. So only what you're putting into your retirement is non-taxable income. The asset itself is protected from not being used in the analysis. Personal expenses, consumer indebtedness are not factored into the formula. So we have the Jones family who lives very frugally. They make $150,000 a year. They have no mortgage. They have no car payments. They have no credit card debt. They basically are debt-free. And they have a household size of 4 with 1 in college. And then we have the Smiths. And they also have a household size of 4 with 1 in college. They also make $150,000, but they make a $2,500 mortgage payment. They make a $300 car payment, and they have $40,000 of credit card debt. The formulas will treat those families exactly the same. The expected family contribution will be exactly the same. So consumer indebtedness, personal debt is not factored into the analysis. Every family of the same size will be given the same allowances against income as the next family of the same size. So individual budgets don't matter. So if someone writes to our office and says, well, this is what I make and this is what I spend, so I can't pay anything for education. It doesn't work like that. So just beware. Okay, savings, non-retirement investments, other real estate is also included as an asset on the FAFSA. So again, the only thing that's excluded would be your home, your primary residence. If you have a second home, that would not be included. Excluded, that would be included. That would be considered other real estate. So you can only exclude your primary residence. Yes?
Do you know how 529 terminals with regards to the FAFSA?
Yes, so 529 accounts should be included as a parent asset, not a student asset. So even if you have a 529 and the beneficiary is your son or daughter, it's not their asset, it's the parent's asset. And it's more beneficial for you to have it as a parent asset than a student asset because parents' assets are taxed at a much lower rate in the formula than student assets are. Now I said earlier, and in general, the contribution families should expect to pay out of income is between 15 and 20%. And the contribution they should be expected to pay out of assets is about 5%. So if you have $100,000 in assets, you can expect to contribute about $5,000 out of the $100,000. So some families think that it's going to be an incredible amount of money when the taxation rate for assets is much lower than it is for income. And it's also lower for parent assets than it is for student assets.
With regards to what gets contributed to the 529, is that considered non-taxable?
So the question is what gets contributed to the 529?
Do you have the value of 529 in the
Okay, so money that you put into a 529 account is not pre-taxed. In other words, you're already paying tax on it. So no, it's not considered non-taxable income. The only reason the 401k, 403 contributions are is because they're not taxed.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Yeah.
If you have a 529 account for multiple children, you include all of them?
Yes. So the question is if you have a 529, that you have one for Johnny and one for Susie, parents need to include all of those 529 accounts, not just the one that they have for the applicant. Okay, the number of family members enrolled in college is really an important variable in the formula. Just to give you some idea of how that works. The FAFSA has taken all of your information into account. It has calculated a total parent contribution of $30,000. And then the next thing it says is, how many students are enrolled in college? The answer is 1. The entire $30,000 goes for that one student. If it's 2, it gets split. 15 goes for one and 15 goes for the other. So let's say that you apply to college, you have a sibling enrolled in college at the same time. Your contribution is 30, so it's going to be 15 at each school. That means at a school that costs $30,000, the family contribution is 15, you qualify for $15,000 in aid. The next year, the second sibling graduated. So you apply to school again, your cost is 30, the family contribution is still 30. You don't qualify for anything need-based because 30,000 minus 30,000 is 0. So just something to pay attention to, because you might say, oh, I can never afford to go to the school. Or you might say, oh, but next year I'll have 2 in college, or I'll have 3 in college. I wonder how that might change my eligibility for aid. So those things are reevaluated on an annual basis.
When parents are not living together,
Sure.
do they combine the incomes of both?
Okay, so it depends. So the question is, if you have 2 parents who are separated or divorced, if you're applying to a public university, likely the only application you're going to complete is the free application for federal student aid. That application is going to ask for the custodial parent's information. So the parent with whom the student lived with the most in the previous 12 months is considered the custodial parent. So the custodial parent will complete his or her asset and income information on the FAFSA, household size, number in college, and if they receive child support from the non-custodial parent, they will include that as non-taxable income. That's the only analysis that will be used to determine that student's expected family contribution. However, if you're looking at a high-cost private institution, like Union, like RPI, you are likely going to be asked to complete the CSS profile, which the custodial parent would complete, but the non-custodial parent may be asked to complete a non-custodial profile. And so each one of the parents is going to be measured independently, but they will both be given allowances against income. So it will be a separate contribution from a custodial parent and a different contribution from the non-custodial parent. Yes?
Does consumer debt include unpaid student loans?
I'm sorry?
Does consumer debt include unpaid student loans?
Does consumer debt include unpaid student loans? Yes. Student loans are not factored in the analysis in either the FAFSA or the CSS profile. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, the FAFSA for 17-18 becomes available October 1, 2016. Use the IRS data retrieval. Make it simple. Don't make any changes on the FAFSA once you do that. If you go in and use the IRS data retrieval, and then you go back and change your income information, it's like not even using it. So you have to use it and leave it, because they're basically dragging that information right off of your tax return. Yes? Yeah? Yes, for 17, 18. So you did it in January for 16, 17, and you used 2015 information. You're going to do it anytime after October 1 for 17, 18, and you're going to use 2015 income information again. Because this is the first year that it's available early, and this is the first year that the application is asking you for prior year income.
You're responsible for the shop. I mean, a couple of years, you have to apply for FAFSA, apply FAFSA every time. I have to tell you, yeah, you got to go to the shop.
Okay, so the question is if you're applying to you apply to a school as a freshman, you apply as an incoming freshman, and you learn that you don't qualify for any need-based aid. So the question is do you reapply each year? I mean, if your financial situation isn't changing and you don't think you're going to qualify and you're not interested in the direct loan, because I will talk a little bit about a loan that every student can get whether they qualify for a need-based loan or not, so which requires the FAFSA. So it could benefit you to apply if you're going to utilize the loan. Okay, CSS profile, which is the application to the College Board, or what we call institutional methodology. And this is the application that schools who have their own large scholarship budget are going to use to determine your institutional scholarship eligibility. So this formula is, the major difference between this formula and the FAFSA is that this will ask for your home value and your home debt. So home equity is going to be used in the analysis. So most colleges that have their own large scholarship budget are going to expect for there to be a student contribution that ranges anywhere from $1,800 to $2,400. So there's an expectation whether the student worked or not, that they are going to work and they are going to bring some resources with them. So it's typically ranges anywhere from 18 to 24. Home equity is generally included in this analysis. It's definitely asked for it. Passive business losses are not necessarily allowed. So while you may have show a business loss on your tax return, and for purposes of the IRS, it's perfectly legitimate. For purposes of financial aid, it's usually added back in. So it's not allowed to reduce your positive income. I mentioned this earlier, the non-custodial parent may also have a contribution if the school requires that the non-custodial parent complete an application. Family-owned businesses are assessed, whereas on the FAFSA, if there's less than 100 employees, it's not used in the analysis. And the CSS profile has always been available on October 1. So that's why the FAFSA has joined up with CSS profile so that the applications become available on the same dates. CSS profile has also joined in with the FAFSA and agreed to use prior year. So it's the same information that you're going to report on the CSS profile that you're going to report on the FAFSA. Unfortunately, at this point in time, you cannot link the CSS profile up to the IRS. I do believe there is something in the works that at some point down the road, there may be a way to electronically transfer some information onto the CSS profile, but for 17-18, there will be nothing like that will be available. So, but it is an online application and it is intuitive, so it will direct you to each section of the profile to complete. Yes?
So the need to include the CSS profile will be determined by the school's financial aid?
Correct. So depending upon the schools that you're applying to, will determine which applications you complete. Everyone is going to require the FAFSA, so you absolutely need to do the FAFSA. And some schools will require the CSS profile. And some schools will require the non-custodial profile and or the business supplement. So I would urge you to visit websites of the financial aid of the schools that you're looking to apply to. Go to the financial aid, sometimes admissions and financial aid are together. Go to their website, find out what are their due dates, what are their application requirements. What you don't want to do is you don't want to miss out on completing the correct applications and completing them by the due dates. And I'll give you an example. So at Union, we require students applying regular decision to complete the CSS profile and the FAFSA by February 1. We might actually change our filing dates because you can file by October 1. So we might change it to our admission date, filing date, which is January 15th. We might say January 15th, you need to submit your admission application, your CSS profile, and your FAFSA. So we read applications for January, February, March. And around the third week in March, we put all our decisions in the mail. And all of our financial aid budget goes out the door. And then, a week after mailing, Mrs. Smith calls. Oh my God, Johnny's so excited he got accepted to Union. And now we want to apply for financial aid. And I have to tell them that, sorry, the deadline was January 15th, and we put all our money out the door. Well, what if so-and-so doesn't come? We've factored that in. So don't put yourself in that situation. It happens every year. A couple of families fall through the cracks, or they filed the previous year's applications instead of the appropriate year application. Because whenever you go to file a FAFSA or a CSS profile, you're going to have we work in 2 years at one time. You want to make sure you're filling out the one for the applicable year that your son or daughter is applying to. Don't fill out the wrong aid year. You'll think you've done everything, and then you'll find out. I had one of those this year too. So
she's graduating next year, October 1st of this year.
senior year, October 1st of your senior year.
They should be already done.
At the end of the day on October 1, they should be already done, right? Well, October 2nd, or yeah. Yeah, your 17-18 application. Yes?
Yes, I'm guessing about when you apply on October 1st foundation, you don't have any school lessons.
You don't have any school?
Because you are going to school next year, so you do not have any school, so in FAFSA, what you have to approach?
Well, on October 1, you should have an idea of what schools your son or daughter is thinking of applying to. Right? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, like, if you have like 20 schools like in your mind, so you put all these schools.
Oh yes, you can list. You can only list up to. I think they expanded it to 10. So you can put your first 10, and then when you get your acknowledgement back, you add new schools to get the information. I would never let my kid apply to more than 10 schools. No way. No way.
How long before the acknowledgement comes? How long does that take?
Oh, the turnaround time is 2 to 3 days. Yeah, it's pretty quick. Everything's online.
So with that acknowledgement, does that tell you what your expected family contribution?
Actually, when you submit your application, you're going to get an expected family. Yeah, as soon as you get you're going to get the expected family contribution. It's going to tell you right there. Yes.
Just somewhere in the application that you can explain like the changes in income as a spouse or parent.
Okay, question is there a place on the application to explain different circumstances? The answer to that is on the FAFSA, no, there is no place. On the CSS profile, there is a special circumstances box. What I would encourage you to do, if you have information that is special circumstances, out of the ordinary, things that can't be explained on the applications, I would communicate that separately to the financial aid offices of the schools that you're applying to, so that it gets included as part of your application.
CS is provided for each and every, like, if you are applying for 10 colleges, you have to have CS provided for different one.
CSS profile, no, you can list, you'll be able to list them all on the CSS profile.
Just as FAFSA.
I'm sorry?
Just as FAFSA.
FAFSA is the one with the limit of 10 for the first time around, but then you can take those 10 off and put 10 more on. And CSS profile will allow you to put them all on right up front for a small fee. It's not free. It's $25 for the first, and I don't even remember. It's about 20 for the second, and every one after that. So it's not free.
Every application,
Through the CSS profile, there is a fee.
but FAFSA is not.
No, it is a free application for federal student aid. Free.
I've seen like,
Okay. All right, how do we calculate need? We take the cost of attendance of the school that you are looking at. Cost of attendance includes tuition, fees, room, board, books, supplies, transportation, miscellaneous. And you will subtract the expected family contribution from that cost to determine a student's need or eligibility for financial aid. Now, I've talked a little bit about how the formulas work. They're income driven. What are the variables that are going to determine your expected family contribution? You also have great tools at your disposal on every college website called a net price calculator. So if you go on to Union financial aid website, Google calculator, you will get our net price calculator. You could sit there for 15 minutes if you have your tax return right by your side, and you could get an estimate of your net price. Net price is cost minus grants and scholarships. It's not factoring in loans, and it's not factoring in work. So net price, cost minus grants and scholarships. Every college and university has a net price calculator on their website. So if you have a list of schools that your son or daughter is interested, that's a way for you to know, oh, wow, I think I can afford to apply to this school, or no way, not even letting them look at it. So at least inform yourself before you go out and do all the college searches. You can do it at your desktop. You can compare from one school to the next. What is my net price going to be? And so to determine your eligibility for aid at the schools that you're looking at, we're going to take the cost of attendance, we're going to subtract the expected family contribution as measured by the CSS profile for purposes of institutional scholarship, and as measured by the FAFSA for federal grants and loans. Yeah, I had a hand up there. Yes?
The net price calculator, does that use the income like the FAFSA, or does it use the income like the CSS, like for income?
Okay, so a net price calculator that a school has on their website is going to want to tell you what you're eligible for in terms of their institutional grants and scholarships. So it's likely going to be the CSS profile analysis that's behind the scenes doing the analysis. Okay, and now I have a couple of samples for you. Things that you want to be paying attention to when you start getting your financial aid award letters in the mail in March and April. So number one, we have a school that costs $50,000. And we have an expected family contribution of $25,042. So that student demonstrates need at the level of 24,958. That same student applied to another school where the cost of attendance was $25,000. And their family contribution is the same as $25,042, and they demonstrate no need for need-based financial aid. In the sample aid awards, we have two different examples. Both examples, these schools are meeting full need. Number one, remember their need is $24,958. So this school is given I'm going to start at the bottom, a job for $1,800, a loan for $5,500, and they've met the balance of that need in grant or scholarship from the institution. And that's just exactly how we do it at Union, so that's why I use that as an example. In school number 2, you can see they gave a $2,000 job, a $10,000 loan, and they met the balance of that student's need with scholarship, but it's about $5,000 less than the one that gave the lower loan and the lower job. So just some things that you should be comparing as you get financial aid awards. So you don't just look at the bottom line. Look at the components that are making up that bottom line. Yes?
Is that loan to student or loan to parents?
It's a loan to student. And that's what I wanted to touch on a little bit earlier. This gentleman asked, if I don't qualify for any aid, so in this example, you don't qualify for any need-based aid, but that student can get an unsubsidized direct loan for $5,500 as a first-year student. As a sophomore, they can get $6,500. As a junior and a senior, they can get $7,500. So the question is, do you want them to take out loans in their name, even though they're not subsidized? So unsubsidized means the interest is going to accrue on the loan while the student is enrolled. Yes?
So if the school has a CSS profile, you have to fill it out whether or not you apply for it. Whether or not you apply.
If you don't want to apply for financial aid, you don't have to. But if you want to be considered for financial aid, you must complete whatever applications the school requires.
Like applying financial aid has any impact on the acceptance?
Does applying for financial aid have any impact on the acceptance? That's a good question. It depends on the school. So some schools are need aware. What does that mean? It means that the level of need that a student has may impact whether or not that student gets accepted at a school that meets full need. Because if you're applying to a school that meets full need, let's face it, they have a budget and they have to balance the budget. So every student can't qualify for $50,000. So you have to have a group of students who can pay the full amount in order to be able to give sizable financial aid awards that meet full need. So I never say to people, say no to financial aid if you need it, because you don't want to get accepted to a school that you can't afford to go to without financial aid resources. But it does mean that students who have the ability to pay the full boat may have an advantage over students who don't, given that academically everything else is considered equal. Yes?
So how do you know if the school is
Need aware?
yeah.
Okay. You might have to ask. It's not something people advertise. Frankly, I'm right up front with it. We're need aware at Union. We meet full need, which I think is a great policy. There's nothing worse than admitting a student who has a need of $40,000, but you only give them 20. How do you expect them to come? Because remember, and I haven't touched on this yet, but You know, student loan indebtedness has, you know, become the talk of the town. And, you know, we like to manage student loan indebtedness and keep it at a minimum where we can. And I say to families, don't borrow more than you think your first year's starting salary is going to be. General rule of thumb. Yes?
You mentioned the student's contribution.
Yes.
What percentage, if they have like a trust fund or assets or something?
Okay. Student assets. The taxation rate, or the amount that's going to be expected in the formulas from student assets, is on the FAFSA, it's 20%. And on the CSS profile, it's 25%. Okay, so the message here, pay attention to how much loan is in the package. Some schools throw parent loans in there and show that as meeting need. Anybody can borrow parent loans. That shouldn't be part of a financial aid package. A financial aid package should include grants, scholarships, things that are non-repayable, student loans, and student employment. It shouldn't go expand into parent loans. Parents can always borrow the expected family contribution if they wanted to or didn't have that expected family contribution that was expected of them readily available to pay out of their income or their savings. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay, next. Financing options beyond the financial aid award. We'll start with parent loans. So there is a federal direct parent loan that a parent can take out in their name. They are considered the borrower. They are responsible for repayment. You don't have to have a job. You don't have to prove that you can pay the loan back. You just have to have good credit. If you have good credit, you will be approved for a parent loan. And you can borrow up to the cost of attendance at the school minus the amount of aid that the student is receiving. So in the examples I had earlier, the expected family contribution is something like $24,000. Parent could borrow that $24,000 in a parent loan if they wanted to. You have 10 years to repay a parent loan. Interest rate is 6.2%, I believe. And there's a 4.2% origination fee that they take out of the loan. So I say to you, while it's easy to get, it's not cheap. So you might be able to do better with a home equity. And I know there are some, I'm trying to think, Chase and Citizens have just come out with parent loans with actually a little bit lower interest rates and no origination fees. So, and I have a feeling Sallie Mae, Wells Fargo, and everyone else is going to follow. So before you jump into taking out a direct parent loan, you might want to just see what other lenders are doing in the parent loan arena, because they're trying to be competitive and, you know, not paying a 4.2% origination fee. If you borrow $10,000, you're paying, you know, $420, taking right out of the loan. So it's not the best loan out there. It's just easy to get. Most schools have tuition payment plans where you're going to take the amount that you're going to owe the college over the course of the year and make 10 equal monthly payments. Generally, there's a $40 or $50 enrollment fee to participate in that. Alternative private loans. Typically, these are loans that students take out in their name, but they would require credit-worthy cosigners on the loans. Again, you can borrow up to the cost of attendance minus the amount of aid. So you can replace the family contribution with a private alternative loan. I don't recommend it. As I said earlier, I don't like to see students borrowing more than what they expect their first year starting salary to be. We had a student once who wanted to come to Union so badly. The family contribution was about $25,000, and her parents were, no way were they going to pay it. They just were not going to do it, and she took out private alternative loans to the tune of $100,000, and it's just, I don't recommend it. No matter how bad your son or daughter wants to go to a school, make the choice one that they're going to be happy with when they graduate, that they're not going to be so saddled with loans that they can't do anything else except pay student loans. So I know it's hard. Sometimes they're hell-bent on they want to go here and they're going, no matter what. So it's just, I try to put it in perspective. There's great schools out there, and there's a great school for everybody. There is a home for every student, and it doesn't have to be a high-cost school. You know, it can start out at we have the best community college in our neighborhood out of the state. Hudson Valley is a wonderful place for students to start, and there are many schools that take full credit of that 2-year Hudson Valley. I know RPI is a perfect example. Their engineering science program. You go to Hudson Valley for 2 years, you transfer, you're a full-fledged junior at RPI. It's a great program. So make sure that when you're having these discussions with your kids, talk about the 4-year plan. What is this going to cost over the course of 4 years? What are you going to end up with student loans? And parents also shouldn't be, pulling money out of the retirement plan to pay for higher education. That's also not a great idea. So try to find something that fits with your budget. And then outside scholarships. Obviously, the more a student can get, the better. Typically schools will allow you to keep them, but again, the question is, ask the school. If my son wins a $5,000 outside scholarship, what does this do to the aid award that you've offered to him? You're going to get a different answer at every school, but you are going to have to report it to the school, so you want to just know up front, how is this going to impact the financial aid package that the student has been offered? Okay, final thoughts. Learn your approximate expected family contribution, especially if you've never done this before. And be seated when you do it, because you're going to go, are you kidding? It's not necessarily realistic. I'll agree with you on that. But it is what it is. Use a net price calculator. That'll give you some gauge of what your net price would be at any given school. Most colleges, as I said earlier, work with a financial aid budget. So some of us meet full needs. Some schools are need blind. But just because they're need blind doesn't mean they meet full needs. In fact, the only schools that are need blind are the schools like Harvard and Yale and Princeton, because their endowment is so big that they can afford to be need blind, and they don't live within a budget. So any other school that you're looking at is likely need aware. Check websites for applications. The application deadline dates, and they're all going to vary from school to school. So start looking now to see, what are the forms that you're going to need to complete, because October 1 will be here before you know it. Many of you are going to complete the common, or your sons or daughters are going to complete the Common App, which is the application for admission that gets sent to all the schools that they're applying to. And there's a question on there that says, are you applying for need-based aid? And, they think their parents are millionaires. They think they have unlimited resources. And so many times they don't even consult with their parents. They check off, no. And the way it works for us, you say no on your admission application, you never get to the financial aid office. You never get a notice from us that says, you said you were going to apply for aid and we haven't received your CSS profile. This is a reminder, the deadline is arriving in 1 week or 2 weeks or whatever. So we do send notifications to our applicants. But if you say no, we assume no. So when they begin filling out that application, it is their job to fill out that application, but please make sure you help them answer that question. Maybe the answer is no, but if it's yes, make sure they indicate accordingly. And I think I touched on this. Do not wait for an admission decision before you apply for financial aid, because typically the money has gone out the door. College is measured and meet need in different ways. My example, some give more loan, more job, some give more scholarship. So do your comparison from each school that you get an award letter. And cost should be a factor in choosing a college, not price. So sticker price is not going to be typical for everyone. Yes?
To be considered for scholarships and grants at a need-aware school, you have to fill out the FAFSA and CSS.
Okay, so the question to, I gotta get a sip of water. Are you talking about need-based scholarships? I didn't talk at all about merit, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about that.
I guess either.
Okay, so if you want to be considered for need-based scholarships and grants, you must complete whatever applications that school requires. Typically, like I said, high-cost private is going to ask you to complete the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA. Now, some schools also have merit aid, and there may be separate applications required for merit award consideration. Again, that will differ from school to school, but many schools consider students for merit awards through the admission process. Okay, and separate applications may not be required. Again, that would be something that would be posted on their website if there were separate applications required. And merit awarding is going to vary from school to school. So your son or daughter may get a $25,000 merit award from Clarkson. For what? Oh. A merit award is based on academics, okay? So it depends what their criteria. It could be, they could be measuring SATs, they could be looking at the rigor of the classes that the student took in high school, it could be grade point average, it could be the rigor of the school, the strength of the school. All schools are not equal. So those are the things they're gonna look at. And every school is going to look at things differently, and everybody uses their aid resources differently. So to give you some example, this past year, and merit at Union, very stingy. We are very stingy. And the reason we are is because we meet full need. And so in order to commit to meeting full need, and we meet full need for 4 years, not just the first year, not just the second year. We measure need each year. Need is met each year. In order to do that, we can only use a small portion of our budget for merit awarding. And so our merit awards range from $5,000 to $20,000, and very few students get $20,000. And actually, about 15% of our budget is used in the form of merit awards. I had many students this year get merit awards from other schools, $20,000, $25,000, and we gave nothing. It doesn't mean that your student isn't worthy of a merit award if they don't get one at any given school. It's simply a function of how that school has decided to use their scholarship budget. Yes?
So merit-based award can have some impact on full aid for need-based also?
Okay, so if someone gets selected to receive a merit award and they also apply for need-based aid, they cannot have aid that is in excess of their federal need, which is the FAFSA analysis. So generally, merit awards are not stacked on top of need-based awards, but they're within need. Like you could get a need-based grant and a merit-based award, but it's within need. Again, that will differ from school to school.
So does that typically mean that a family would never receive more aid, enough aid to cover up their EFC? The EFC is what it is, and then you're working on the non-EFC.
If you're receiving need-based aid. So another example, let's use the example of the, the one where the need was $24,000. So let's say that student got a $25,000 merit award. They can do that. They just can't get any need-based federal aid on top of that. So sometimes merit awards will actually exceed a student's need. But then you're not going to get need-based grant on top of it, and you cannot receive a subsidized direct loan or a need-based loan on top of it, because you cannot go beyond federal need. Your aid resources cannot go beyond federal need. But you can get the unsubsidized loan for the $5,500. Yes?
Can you explain that a little bit further, because the loan that a student can get, that is unsubsidized loan, that is at the school, is that through another institution?
Okay, so the federal direct loan is a loan through actually the federal government. And eligibility is determined through the FAFSA. So depending upon the cost of the school, the expected family contribution, which then determines the need, that will determine whether or not the student receives subsidized loan or unsubsidized loan. So if they demonstrate need for the subsidized portion, $3,500 will be subsidized and $2,000 will be unsubsidized. If they don't demonstrate any need, then all of the loan is unsubsidized. Subsidized means that no interest accrues on the loan while the student is enrolled. And unsubsidized means interest does accrue. The interest rate is 3, it just changed, it's changing on July 1 to, I want to say 3.6, something like that.
For the merit scholarship, does that take into account the major for the student, and then whether that student is a woman or minority?
It could. That's going to vary from school to school. I know that there are some schools that, might have a scholarship for engineering majors or journalist majors or whatever. That's something school specific you would need to inquire about. And the other thing about merit awards to ask and to learn is, are there any renewal requirements for this merit award? Because, do I have to maintain a certain grade point average? Did I get selected because I'm in a certain major, and what if I change majors? So those are the kinds of questions to ask, because sometimes there are pretty high grade point average requirements in order to have that scholarship renewed. So just good to know before you go in feet first.
Where does the plus money come from?
The federal plus is a direct loan, part of the direct loan program. It's also from the federal government. Yes.
If a student's applying early decision, are they at a disadvantage financially?
Okay, question. If a student is applying early decision, are they at a disadvantage for financial aid purposes? Actually, they're a little bit of an advantage financially, at least at Union, because we are less need aware for early decision than we are for regular decision. And that's because we haven't used any of our scholarship budget. So there's a lot of money there. And we become more need aware as we get closer to the end of the admission cycle. So the only difference is we're less need aware. The way we measure need, the way we put financial aid packages together is exactly the same for early decision as it is for regular decision. The only other disadvantage that I will mention is you don't have the option of comparing awards with other schools. Yes? Well, go ahead. What? Sally Mae loans? Yeah. They're legit. They're the private alternative loans that students take out in their name with a creditworthy cosigner. They're very legit, yes. Okay.
Can you explain the TAP application a little bit?
TAP application? Sure. Okay, so actually when you complete your free application for federal student aid, and they see that you say you're a New York State resident, it's going to ask you if you want to link up to the TAP Express application, and you want to say yes, and then they're going to ask you a couple questions, and you're basically being considered for the New York State TAP Award. Well, Pell is automatically through the FAFSA, so it's not a separate linking up.
Do they require that you go to a New York college?
In order, if you are eligible for TAP, yes, you must be a New York State resident and you must attend a New York State college. Yes. Those awards range from $500 minimum to $51.65 maximum. I'm sorry? When does what start? It depends. If you're applying early decision, usually November, you'll begin filling out your admission application. And if you're applying regular decision, that's usually due in January. Yes?
You basically fill out a test with the new due October 1st. Then you transfer, not to the IRS, but can you transfer the data to India's FAFSA into the
Oh, you're going to file, is it for your same student? Okay, so she's asking, I filed a FAFSA for my son for 16-17, the year we're about to, right? 16-17. Yep. Some of the biographic information, you'll get a renewal application, so the biographic information will be the same, but you still need to link up to the IRS data retrieval. So you still need to start, you need to do another application. Just because,
This year, I was able to bring in the stuff from next year. So this isn't the first time I'm doing stuff the second, it's actually going to be the third time.
right,
The process is a little different because it's always been on January 1st.
right,
So we have to take the previous year's information and bring it aside from the IRS.
right, yes.
So what I'm asking is
It-
still going to do that?
I'm assuming that it is, yes. I have not heard that it will not. So for those of you who have been through this before, have not been through this before, first time you file a FAFSA, you fill it out, start to finish. The next year, you get a renewal FAFSA. And what happens is you see all the same biographic, name, social security number, address of the student applicants. You don't have to re-enter all of that information. You just update the pieces which relate to the income and assets and so on and so forth. So that's what she's, and I'm assuming that's going to happen again this year. Although I'm not creating the form, but I'm gonna hope for the best. Way in the back.
If you have a sibling that's on scholarship and merit-based, don't need is it required to put them in as another student who is in college?
Yes, you would want to include that. The instructions are clear. Include people in your household whom you support. Include any of those people who are enrolled in college.
But then the aid would just go to one child as opposed to the other.
No, the FAFSA doesn't know that you're getting full merit from another school. They're not that sophisticated. Yes?
You talked about for the 17-18 school year, that uses 2015 income information.
Right.
What point in time do they look at your assets? At the beginning of the 2015
Okay.
assets?
So when you fill out your FAFSA for 17-18, remember you're going to report 2015 income. Everything else you report is going to be as of the day you're completing that application. So your assets are going to be as of the day you submit and complete your application. Information with regard to size of household and number of families enrolled in college is specific. It will ask you how many people will you support between July 1, 2017 and June 30, 2018. So that's date specific. But everything else that you're reporting is as of that date. Yes?
So, getting back to the household income, so I'm a custodian parent.
Okay.
I'm remarried. All the kids are with me most of the time. I go to the household income. Do I count my husband or stepfather's income?
Yes. So both applications, FAFSA and CSS profile. If a custodial parent is remarried, you must include the step parent's information regardless of any agreements that anybody had previous to that. You must include their information, asset and income information. Yes?
When you count kids in college, do you count grad school or just kids that are undergraduate?
For purposes of the FAFSA, you can include students in grad and undergrad. And you can do the same on the CSS profile, but that will be treated differently by different schools. So some schools may say that they do not include graduate students in the formula for purposes of their own institutional scholarship. And the reason for that is, by definition, a graduate student is an independent student. So they can apply for aid on their own without reporting parents' information. I know in many cases, parents are still helping those students. But and again, that's going to vary from school to school whether or not they allow the grad students in that formula. But for purposes of the FAFSA, yes, you can include both. Is there an age cutoff for the independent student definition? If you're 24, you're automatically considered independent. Yes?
So if grad student who's no longer in their tax return is included in the
I'm sorry?
The grad student who's not dependent on your tax return isn't part of the household anymore?
That's not necessarily the case. A grad student, even if you don't claim them on your taxes, can still be considered part of your household. So the definition for whether or not they qualify as a dependent on your tax return is different than whether or not you can include them as part of the household. So the question on the FAFSA will say, how many people will you support between July 1, 2017 and June 30, 2018? How many people will live in your household? Or if there are other people that perhaps don't live in your household, like a graduate student, you provide more than half of their support for it. You can include them as part of your household. But you may not be able to claim them as an exemption on your tax return. So there's different rules for those. Yes?
The inclusion of people that are not necessarily in their household. I have a stepdaughter who lives mostly with her mother, but she lives with us also. Is there a time frame where they can be considered part of your household? Like, do they have to live in your household for a certain amount of weeks or a year, months or anything?
If you provide more than half of their support, you can count them as a member of your household, even if they're not living in the household. I'm sorry? Yep. Yes, they are. Grandparents living in the household can be included as members of the household.
For the CSS profile, not custodial parent, other person in the household is not custodial parent. How does that answer?
Don't need to include that person, income or assets. The key is married. So if you don't want to include that other person's income, don't get married. Yes?
We can say on the custodial parents, they take that income. So in our situation, we have shared custody, so neither of us is custodial, 50/50.
There's always one of those, isn't there? So people say to me, I say, provide the information for the parent who you live with the most. And then they say, 50/50, equal, exactly the same amount of days. Okay. Then provide the income information for the parent who provided the most support. No, we both gave exactly the same amount. Then I say, pick a parent. Just pick one of you and stick with it for 4 years. Yep, just be consistent. So pick the parent that you're going to say is going to be the custodial parent. Remember, that is a person that's going to have to make sure they complete all the 8 applications by the due date every year.
So new IRS data retrieval, is that required or is that optional?
IRS data retrieval is not required. It is optional. But it is your best option if you don't want to have to. Let me just give you an example of what a family has to do if they don't use the IRS data retrieval. So they file their FAFSA. They say decline. They don't want to use IRS data retrieval. Their application is selected for verification. And they're selected randomly. Some are selected because of the information they were provided, and some are just selected randomly. So the school gets this application, oh, they're selected for verification. Oh, they didn't utilize the IRS data retrieval tool. Okay. You now need to request from the IRS a copy of your federal tax return transcript. We cannot accept a copy of the tax return that you submitted. That's not sufficient documentation. So you need to request from the IRS. And once you get that, you need to send it to the school. And I've heard from families, there's some delays with the IRS. I mean, that's a surprise, right? Yeah. So you're just going to save yourself a lot of headache if you can utilize the IRS data retrieval. It makes perfect sense. Your information is secure. It's not going anywhere. It's actually more secure to do that than probably to have to request a transcript and then send the transcript to the school. And then we image it, and then we keep it in our records. I'd rather just have your FAFSA where you utilize the IRS data retrieval tool. Yes?
Speaking of that, there's a lot of, basically these documents have everything on. Who sees these documents? I mean, they go to your office.
Yeah.
Who sees all this information? It's got every piece of information on the family, the
Yep.
children. Who sees
The only people that see the documents that come into our office are the staff that works in our office. And because you have to log in. One of the things I will say to families, I cannot believe how many people will email their tax return. Email is so not secure. We ask people to fax it to us. Please fax it to us. We have a Dropbox actually online where you can submit documents for financial security reasons. You're putting yourself at jeopardy when you email sensitive documents that have your information on it. I can't tell you how many families we are dealing with that can't even get us their tax return transcripts because of identity theft. So rest assured, I'm sure all 8 offices have similar security that we do. Your information is safe and secure, but get it to us in a safe and secure manner. And you probably will never have anything to worry about. And it is never, ever shared with anybody other than the people that work in our office. Yes?
Well, I think you covered this, but I just want to verify.
Sure.
CSS profile for a business, we own business, so under the income, you don't use the adjusted gross income, which would take out the Schedule C stuff, you would use the income before that.
No, if you're filing, you have business income, that's going to be part of your adjusted gross. So it's already going to be in there. Because your business income is from Schedule C. And that drops down to the bottom, which is included in your adjusted gross income. What I'm saying is you're also going to need to include the value of your business as an asset on the CSS profile, if it has a value. Not all businesses have a value, depending upon, you could be a consultant and you're self-employed and you have a business name, but if you aren't there, maybe that business doesn't have any value. So not all businesses have value. Yes?
So for non-custodial parent, if that person is married, does he need to report both?
Yes.
That is just a CSS profile, not.
Correct. CSS profile. Yes?
Where it asks the number of family members in college, do they have to be full-time enrolled in college, or what if it's a parent taking like one grad class?
Okay, well, number one, where it asks for the number of family members enrolled in college, it does not include parents. So you can't include parents in that number. It's only students, and they must be enrolled on at least a half-time basis in order to be included as enrolled in college. Yes?
On the CSS, you mentioned there's a checkbox for special exceptions. What are some examples of special exceptions? Are there any others? Are there any particular?
Okay, examples of special circumstances would be, you've just filled out your CSS profile, you've provided your 2015 income information, and it's October 1, 2016, and you're unemployed, and you've been unemployed since April. So that's a change in circumstances. That's something that's significantly different than the 2015 income, which is going to be used in the analysis. So if you have an example like that, that is something that I consider special circumstances. That's where you would provide information outlining your situation to the financial aid office, include documentation of, you know, from your employer that you're no longer employed as of a certain date. We'll ask you to estimate your information for 2016. That's special circumstances. Another parent has been diagnosed with cancer and is no longer able to work and has high medical bills, and they were the breadwinner. That's an example of a special circumstance. Way in the back.
Can you clarify again on the step-parent, like my husband, pays child support for 3 kids, one of which is going to college this year. So by paying the child support, does that mean that we can put those 3 children on our dependent list?
Okay, step back. Are you the custodial parent of the student?
Yes.
Okay. And your husband or the stepfather, right? Okay, pays child support out.
Right.
Okay. Actually, that's a question on the FAFSA. So that money will be excluded from your income. So you can't do both. I mean, you can't include them as your household if you're also going to include that you're paying child support out to those 3 individuals. So one of the questions on the FAFSA is child support received, child support paid. So because you're paying child support, that will actually be taken into account and it will reduce your income by that amount. So you're getting the benefit of it, but you're not getting them in your household.
Okay.
Yes? I'm sorry. Question is are there allowances made for other children who attend private high schools? On the FAFSA, it doesn't matter. On the CSS profile, that's going to vary from school to school. So some schools do allow when a family pays private secondary, elementary or secondary tuition. Other schools do not. Sometimes they only allow it if the student is attending because of special needs, and those special needs can't be met in the public school. So again, that would be a question to ask at the different schools that you're interested in. Yes?
You mentioned the tap link in the FAFSA online form. Is there additional information on tax reporters that FAFSA doesn't?
They're going to ask you for New York State taxable income. And then they're going to verify it with their records anyway, but
That's still from the IRS?
no, that's from the New York State database. Yep. Yes?
These forms out, is there something you can call questions, like yourself perhaps? Helpline?
Well, the College Board, the CSS profile has a helpline. So The College Board has customer service people there to answer your specific questions about how to fill out the form. And so does the free application for federal student aid. So there are customer service reps on both ends of these applications.
You have a part-time job where you help people do all
It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. Okay. Thank you guys. Oh, yes.
Are students able to use aid awarded from one college to bargain financially off of another college?
Okay. So the question is you get all your aid packages in March, and they're all over the board. WPI gave you a crappy award. Union gave you a great award. RPI gave you a mediocre award. But you really want to go to WPI. But they're not making it affordable. Can you go back to WPI and say, hey, I got these other awards. Can you do anything more? Absolutely. We do it all the month of April. And I will say this, you have a better shot at getting an improved aid award if you have a genuine change in circumstances in terms of need-based aid. In terms of merit awarding, if you get a better merit award from another school or other schools, but the one you want to go to has given you the smallest, it doesn't hurt you to reach out and ask if they can do better. Just manage your expectations, because they may not be able to match or even come close. Because like I said, every school has a budget and they manage things differently. I know, perfect example, like I said, we had a lot of awards from other schools where they were giving them $25,000 and we gave the same student 10. And we don't go higher than 20. So the very most a student was going to get was 20. We wouldn't match the 25. So that's going to vary from school to school, but by all means, if you get better awards, but the school that you genuinely want to go to is not affordable, then you can certainly go back to them, whether it be a change in circumstance, a better award from another school, or maybe it's none of those things. Maybe you didn't get better awards. Maybe you don't have a change in circumstance, but you really want to go there. You can ask. It doesn't hurt to ask.
Would you recommend that request come from the student?
I would recommend that request, yes, definitely.
Phone call, email?
In writing. Typically, appeals for additional aid must be in writing. And if you got better awards, you will want to include the other awards with your appeal. Yes?
How does sports come into it with play sports?
Well, if you're a Division III school, it should not come into play at all. We're not allowed to do anything different for Division III sports than for any other need-based aid. If you're a Division I school and you have grants attached to your Division I program, well, that's different.
But Division III, sometimes they ask for early decision. How does that work? Because you won't know the financial factors until later.
Oh, really?
The ex-NESCAC school, they're asking for early decisions by October if they're going to select a team.
Okay, well, the way early decision works, not in all schools, I guess. You're telling me they're not going to get an aid award with their admission decision?
I guess there's estimates, but I guess the financial factors.
And that's possible. I mean, maybe some schools don't do their aid awards early for early decision. We do. So if our early decision deadline for early decision 1 is November 15th. We require the CSS profile is done by November 15th. And this year we'll require FAFSA to be done by November 15th. And in mid-December, we send out notification of acceptance along with their financial aid award. So they do know up front. I don't have an answer for you about what to do with a school that isn't going to give you an aid award until later. That's kind of sketchy. I don't like that. How do you make a decision whether or not you can afford? Or are they going to give you some pre-read?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. It was a college ID can't go there to be specific.
Okay. And they're not cheap either. Yes?
If a parent is a graduate of that college, what impact does that make on admissions, and also does that make any impact on financial aid?
No impact on financial aid. I guess it could play some part in admissions, but small. I would say small. And again, that could be different from school to school. I guess I'm speaking on behalf of the union. I do know it has no impact. We do not have legacy scholarships, so doesn't come into play, and we don't measure need or package any differently for students who have had grandparents or parents or aunts and uncles attend. So I would say it could, especially if you're the chairman of the board, of the college, and you're their son or grandson, then that could play a part in admission, but not in financial aid. Yes?
On the same thought, what if you have a second student going to that same college? Does that play into maybe a little bit more financially?
No different than 2 in college. So the formula will take care of that, but it doesn't matter that the 2 are at the same school necessarily. Now, there may be some schools that offer discounts for siblings. We don't do that. I don't know of any schools that do that, but I get asked that a lot. So I'm wondering if other schools are doing something like that, but we do not.
I was told Marist does that.
Okay, possible. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming out. If you did get a green sticker, please come up for a t-shirt. And if you could please fill out the bottom half of your survey so that we know what your needs are with regards to financial aid. In addition, this program is typically held in November of the senior year. We changed it to June of the junior year because of the new FAFSA filing date. We want to hear from you if this was helpful, timing-wise and otherwise. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, for retrograde. I have a daughter who is going to university.
Okay.
I have a son going to school, so I remember the estimator. I